Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2021 NAMI Tennessee Facebook Live Series. My name is Gabe Howard, and I am here with the Executive Director of NAMI Tennessee, Jeff Fladen, and we are going to, are you ready? Predict the mental health landscape for 2021. I mean, that's the goal, right, Jeff? To tell the future.
We're going to predict the future, and I want to start off first by saying Happy New Year, Gabe. I hope that you and yours are happy and well.
We're looking forward to it not being 2020.
It's not 2020, but I do have an announcement related to prediction. I predict if you write on your calendar January 23rd, that you can join NAMI Tennessee for a special Saturday night with NAMI. And what this is about is trying to figure out how to have my face straight because I'm on an angle here with the camera. There we go, do the opposite. On January 23rd, NAMI Nights with NAMI will feature a really talented, famous mentalist by the name of Sidney Friedman that Gabe got to see at NAMI Walks.
I love him.
He is great, and let me just tell you why. It seems like an odd thing, but the easy prediction is for the next couple months when it's dark and cold, we probably won't be going out a lot at night. And so just to give something to do on some Saturday nights once a month, we're going to have a special evening of entertainment. It won't be a NAMI all about mental health, which today's show will be. It's going to be a Sydney show where he can read your mind and predict the future. And we'll have about a 2-minute info about NAMI because part of this is to raise awareness of the work that we do and give people something to do when we're cooped up and we can't go outside in the dark at night. There won't be Christmas lights to look at, and it might not be so safe for a while to go to a movie or go out to dinner or go to parties in the evening just yet. So I predict we will have a special fun night on January 23rd. There will be a ticket required because we are going to pay Sydney. But you can have as many people crowded around the computer that you feel safe with, whatever that number is for you. So watch for that. Gabe, how do they find what we're doing?
So the best way to find out everything that NAMI Tennessee does is to join NAMI Tennessee's email list, namitn.org. You won't miss anything. We announce, for example, the Facebook Lives. We announce everything that NAMI Tennessee is doing. You will be the most hooked up person in the entire world, the envy of your friends.
And since I started with the commercial, we don't want to lose the audience, but do you want to quickly tell us you got a new gig too? Would you like to share?
Oh, yeah. So I am going to be the lead podcast producer over at healthline.com, which is a subsidiary of Red Ventures. They own a ton of websites that you have heard of, like Psych Central, for example, and healthline.com and Greatest. They're also own CNET. Everybody's heard of CNET. And I am super duper 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 excited to be involved with them because it allows mental health advocacy to just go so far. I mean, it's the resources that they have at their disposal and their audience size is it's incredible. And I'm excited to be able to get our message out into the hands of so many new people. I feel like I'm finally getting outside of the choir, Jeff, and that's the most exciting part for me.
Well, I think that here's one of my predictions. I think that CNET will have a mental health app in the coming year that they write about. I've read CNET off and on about computer stuff back when you could download this software and hopefully it wouldn't mess up your computer. But they had like this big download thing where you could get the shareware. And I've been reading CNET off and on for 15 years at least. So that's very cool. I was going to start with technology, but you reminded me about advocacy. So this is my first prediction for the year around mental health. Advocacy has never been more important, and it will be harder than ever to do. Much of mental health advocacy is done at the state level when we have state laws and state funding, and there's also at the national level. So what we have is confusion at the national level and maybe a transition, and then there'll be advocacy, but you won't be able to meet people in person. So the paid lobbyists won't be able to have all the steak dinners with the legislators, but it will be harder for grassroots advocates like NAMI advocates and like you and I to go visit our legislators and say mental health is important for everybody, and we need to put people into treatment and not into jail, and we need to have things for in the schools for mental health literacy and appropriate funding and keeping people covered and all these things. So advocacy is going to be tough because we like to visit legislators in person, and I think that's going to be a no-no this year during the legislative session, which in Tennessee begins in January, gets going in February, and ends somewhere around May 1st. And hopefully by then things will be a lot better, but I don't think I'll be going in to visit legislators and saying, please support us. Don't put people with mental illness in jail. Let's have police know how to deal with mental health crises. Legislators are important, and the laws and the state funding for these things are really important. And then what's going on at the national level? We have an election that won't end, and it's going to make paying attention to advocacy and the needs of the people really difficult until things are ironed out, if they are ever peacefully ironed out. Or is everybody just going to be mad with everybody else? Once upon a time in politics, like in sports, people would argue and fight, and after the game, they would shake hands.
Yeah.
Did Ohio State Buckeyes shake hands with the Clemson Tigers after the game?
We did. We OSU and the Tigers. There's so much that I want to say on that, but it used to be you argued and argued and argued and clawed and debated and everybody fought, and then you voted, and then you were all on the same page. And I'm speaking about every nonprofit board that I've ever been on, every boardroom that I've ever been in, every management meeting that I've ever been in any job. Once the decision was made, everybody moved forward. And I am curious as to what toll this is going to have on people's mental health moving forward, because if you believe that you lost fairly, that's a bitter pill to swallow. Well, I have certainly lost my fair share of things, but
let me interrupt. What do you think about advocacy? And then let's move to the election and the outcome after that. Is advocacy going to be different from your point of view?
I do think it's going to be different, and it actually sort of fits in a little bit in the same way. Let's take like the arguments, the disagreements in advocacy, where one side believes one thing and one side believes the other thing. And they're both made up of good people, whether it's family members versus peers or doctors versus family members or whatever. Everybody is scrambling and arguing, and then a decision is made, whether it's a law is passed, there's a vote, whatever. And after that's over, historically in advocacy, everybody comes together and then we move on to the next thing. I think that's the way that it should work, and I think that's very good. What I'm concerned with is our national politics modeling sort of a bad thing. Are people going to think to themselves, hey, just because it's over, you can still complain, gripe, argue, negotiate, whatever? And that does concern me. Is this a bad example that's being set?
I think it could be. So what do you think about the impact of the continued election unease and polarization on mental health in our country? Any impact there? I think we're going to have some challenges.
I think that we will have challenges because, once again, if you lose fair and square, that's a bitter pill to swallow, right? I have certainly lost my fair share of everything, whether it's family game night and you lose to, your younger brother who's been gunning for you since he was 6, or, a board vote, or just any of the things that occur. It's difficult, Jeff. I mean, let's be honest. It stinks to lose. But then it's over, right? Then everybody gets on the same page, everybody moves forward. You're the person you were debating is now your friend again, and it's everybody moves. I worry that people are going to see this as a call to action, that just because the vote happened and you lost doesn't mean that you can't keep complaining. And I worry about you as an executive director, because you know how contentious some of these board votes can be when people disagree. And if the vote happens and everybody comes together, you as an executive director know which direction to go in. But what if a vote happens and the people who voted on the, quote unquote losing end, what if they don't quit? What if they don't get on the same page? What if they keep advocating for their side? I'm not an executive director. That's your problem.
Well, I'm gonna take this a slightly different direction. That I've been pleased in Tennessee that even though we have a Republican supermajority, we have a Republican governor, we have Republican senators, but there seems to be real concern about the impact of mental illness and addiction on our community, and acceptance of medical public health model, as opposed to moral weakness and just being angry at people that have problems in their lives, and wanting to move away from criminalizing these things. And so you could think that a pull yourself up from the bootstraps kind of approach might frown upon taking care of people with an illness, but addiction and mental illness, the opiate abuse issue, these are seen as real policy issues in my state. So that seems to be transcending politics. Have you seen that nationally or in Ohio?
I have. In Ohio, we also have a Republican governor and Republican leadership, and it has been great to see both the Democrats and the Republicans, both parties get on board with this. I'm not trying to pick on Republicans. I'm just or Democrats. I'm just saying there does seem to be a bipartisan effort in Ohio to move forward with this, much like in Tennessee. Nationally, the trend is it's very odd. I'm in Ohio, we have Medicaid expansion, and in Tennessee, you don't. So if I were guessing, I would say that Tennessee would not be interested in this, but they are. They're very much interested in it. So it's very difficult to predict what policymakers are going to do. And that's why advocacy is so important, because imagine if I said in Tennessee, oh, well, since they don't like Medicaid expansion, they're not interested in mental health advocacy, and I stopped advocating. That would have been a horrific mistake, obviously, because of the success that you've had in that advocacy. So the big message is you can try to predict it, but don't count yourself out, because what happens in different states is it's incredibly frustrating, to say the least. Keep talking, keep advocating, keep moving forward.
Well, here's my takeaway, and I hope it's a prediction that will come true. And that is that people that are awakened to the political process will believe that their involvement does matter. And this isn't about voting or supporting a candidate. Instead of just writing on Facebook, write to your legislators about what you think is important. And I think that mental health will be in the news. Here's my other prediction: and the impact of the pandemic on children and teens and isolated and elderly. And the government has something to say about our response. So my hope and prediction is that people will not restrict all of their opinion sharing to social media, but instead will pass some of this on to their legislators at the state and federal and even county level, because in an urban area, some things are funded by counties. And if you don't know what you want to ask for, you can look at NAMI Tennessee, NAMI National, NAMI Ohio. You can look at other organizations that are in the mental health space. And we hope there's more emphasis on a unified approach to dealing with addiction and mental illness, that there's agreement across psychologists and social workers and hospital providers and addiction people that we've got issues that will cost us greatly to ignore. And with recovery, which you can talk about your own recovery, with recovery, a lot of human potential can be reached and not lost. Uh, so I do hope, this is my prediction, people that never wrote to legislators before, but they've been writing to Facebook, will begin to move some of their advocating to writing to their senators and congressmen and governors and county commissioners. Could that happen?
I think that it, it's first and foremost, I want to say, as an advocate, social media posts, they do very little. And everybody stops me on that one. And they're like, so you're telling me that when something trends on Twitter that it doesn't do something? Listen, when something trends, meaning it gets, hundreds of thousands, millions of views, yes, that absolutely does something. But it's so incredibly rare. It's so rare that when it happens, it makes the national news. And then, of course, because it's in the national news, it goes even further. This is not the most things don't go viral, Jeff. Most things don't trend. Most things don't get even a couple of hundred likes on social media. So you're kind of yelling into an echo chamber and hoping you're the one out of a million. You're almost better off playing the Tennessee State Lottery, winning the Powerball, and then just funding mental health advocacy yourself. All of that said, I really hope that people realize that these letter writing campaigns, the email campaigns, phone calls to our policymakers, and joining groups like NAMI Tennessee and having our voice collectively heard, it unequivocally goes farther. Does it happen occasionally on the internet? Absolutely. It absolutely happens occasionally. But, we don't want occasional success. I mean, Jeff, as an executive director, do you stand in front of NAMI Tennessee, in front of the whole state, and say, occasionally we hope to make a difference?
Actually, NAMI Tennessee is a grassroots organization. So if we can motivate people to get involved, it's powerful, because we are not going in with big money donations saying support our bill. We want people to share their stories of how their lives have been impacted, whether they're a caregiver, whether they're living with a diagnosis, that I'm a person and I've benefited from peer support. These things really matter. So I do hope that there'll be an awakening and a transformation of this focus on politics to what are the issues that are important to me in my life, and that we talk about them. And it's not just some highly paid lobbyist that's going to push all the levers that make a difference. So let me ask a different question here. I don't know if you're watching the timer or not, that we get through our predictions, but what's going on with Zoom and how we socialize? And that impacts mental health, because man is a social animal. So not is Zoom stock going up or down, but how are we going to socialize? How are we going to meet our social needs? Are we going to just have this pent up demand, and then everyone's going to be going out to the theater and concerts and movies, concerts, restaurants, elbow to elbow? Because if not, what's happening with socialization?
So I as soon as it is safe, I mean, we're starting to see little pockets of people that are doing it anyways. I mean, for example, the White House had a New Year's Eve party at Malargo that violated Florida law, and they did it anyway. So there's always going to be people that just aren't paying attention. So we're kind of speaking to the broader audience that is in fact following the precautions. I don't want to say rules, because we're following precautions, wearing the mask, social distancing, things like that. I think that there'll be sort of a few groups, Jeff, right? As soon as concerts open back up, there'll be the first group that is at the very first concert. Is when sporting events open back up, there'll be a group that's the very first sporting event. Then there'll be the second wave. They'll be at the second sporting event. They'll be at the second concert, the second symphony, the second play, the second whatever it is, and then there'll be the third group, and that's everybody else is like, okay, well, phase 1 and phase 2, they're doing okay, and we seem to be okay. So my prediction is that those are the 3 waves that it's going to happen in, and I predict that it's going to take the entire year. The vaccine isn't going to be readily available to the public until June, maybe April. I know it varies, so please don't quote me on that. But these are a long time. You need 2 shots, and people are going to be worried. So I think that around October, November is when things are going to be normal. That's my prediction.
Well, I'll start here. I believe Zoom is here to stay. And a lot of people that you would think would never go to this kind of technology have adapted it. And it will be enhanced. It'll look more like you're in a room together. I don't know if we're going to go full virtual reality in 2021, but it won't be far behind. And it's going to change support groups forever, I think.
I am extraordinarily hopeful. And I disappeared. There we are. I am extraordinarily hopeful that the key word there was, I think it's going to change support groups. That's what I want to focus on. I think you're right. And I think that is incredible because I live with bipolar disorder, and I live in a big city. It was easy for me to find bipolar disorder support groups. Depression was a big deal for me. It was easy to find depression support groups, but plus I'm a middle-aged white male, right? There's not a lot of niche that Gabe Howard needed, but I think of people in rural areas, less populated areas. I think of people that might be dealing with a mental illness that's very rare, or at least more rare than depression, and they don't have a lot of options, or they only have one option and they went and for some reason they didn't connect with people, or they're afraid to leave their house. The fact that peer support groups and information can be more readily available to people, I predict that you are right, and Gabe Howard is personally excited about it. Like
I think social isolation is going to be a big problem in 2021 because people are still going to be afraid to go around people. Not everybody, but a lot of people. Do you get nervous if somebody walks up to you that you don't know?
I don't enjoy it. I worry about it, and that has sort of been when this whole thing first started, I wasn't worried at all because I was like, oh, well, I'm going to be fine. I'm physically healthy. I'm not in the high risk category. And then somebody pointed out that, like, well, yeah, but you could carry it to somebody in the high risk category. Well, then I was like, oh man, on one hand, I wish I didn't know that so that I could just, wander around believing that I was protected. But yes, I absolutely worry about that, because what if I bring it home to my wife, or my wife gives it to my mother-in-law, her mother, who is in the high risk category? So yeah, it's there. I guess the answer to your question is yes, it does worry me. I don't know you. And I used to not feel that way. As Jeff will attest, I love everybody. I'll hug the entire world. So it really represents this change for me to keep my distance from people. And it's not how I behave in normal life. Just now. I behave that way now.
Do you see innovation coming to this issue of isolation?
I think that Zoom is a good start, right? I think that people are starting to accept that what this kind of reminds me of, Jeff? I read this great article that when the printing press came out, the printing press, things that gives us newspapers, books, etc. That when the printing press came out, the whole world was like, this is terrible. We have to get rid of this. You can't print stuff. This will make people not remember anymore. Our brains will turn to mush because instead of learning or reading, or instead of learning it, they'll just read it. That's terrible. The printing press didn't hurt us. And then in that same article, the telephone came out. Oh my God, the telephone is good. It's going to be terrible. Instead of people getting together and talking face to face, they're just going to call each other and stay in their homes, and the whole world's going to end. Well, the telephone didn't end the world. And now we have the same thing with cell phones and text messaging. So Zoom, now we're going to hear how Zoom is ruining the world. The good news is we've been here before. None of those other things ruin the world. Zoom is not going to ruin the world. But as we get further and further apart, this is going to give us opportunities to connect with people like ever before. My grandmother, she watched me grow up by visiting 3 times a year. So she got to see her grandson grow up, every 4 months, give or take. Now she can watch her great grandkids grow up daily, because they carry around iPads and call great grandma all the time. That's an amazing thing. We have to learn how the technology is relevant and not abuse it, and not get sucked in so that we're ignoring everybody and blah, 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 blah. There's obviously pitfalls, but no. My grandmother is on Zoom. She's 85 years old. I think it's incredible.
I think we'll find new ways to connect with people that we don't know through shared interests. So Facebook has groups now, but I don't know how much you really connect with them. And how do you avoid scammers and people that want to exploit other people? But don't you remember? You don't remember. Were you old enough to remember the CB craze? Breaker 19, and people had CBs in their cars.
My father's a truck driver, so I had it in my car, the whole family. Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
But did you talk to people you didn't know when you were driving around?
Yeah. Complete strangers. I got lost all the time. And again, with my father being a truck driver, I wasn't afraid of the CB at all. In fact, a lot of the, I got on channel 19, which is the truckers channel. And because I knew all the lingo, I think they thought I was a truck driver with a really weird,
can you sing Convoy?
Voice. The movie Convoy?
Can you sing it?
No. And I haven't heard of the movie either, which is not a movie.
There's a big hit about Convoy.
Okay, we loved the CB.
We're dating myself now.
CB was great.
I think there'll be new ways for people to find other folks with common interests. But I have another prediction that I think will be good for mental health, and that is a back to nature movement that I've already been practicing for the full year. But I think there'll be more people that are going out of the city into the country and bringing the country into their homes through potted plants, through expanded gardening. So gardening, parks, some people moving to more remote areas and working online. And not everyone can leave the city, but I think there'll be a movement, nature bathing for mental health. It's already a movement. I think that's going to really grow, the back to nature. What do you think about that?
It's as a redhead who burns with a picture of the sun. Like my 6-year-old niece takes the yellow crayon, draws a circle, and puts the little, like rays coming out of it and hands it to me. I will immediately get a sunburn.
You can wear a hat, Gabe.
Yeah, that's what people tell me. I am certainly afraid to go outside for long periods of time. That said, you are right. I ate on a patio for the first time in summer, probably in my entire life. We never sat on the patio because, again, Gabe burnt. But because all the restaurants were closed, that was the only option. We had to sit on the patio. And my wife and I would go for walks, again, because we were bored. And it was nice. We went hiking, and we went, Lisa and I, my bestie, we drank coffee sitting on the patio with the coffee shops because these were the only options. And I didn't hate it. And despite all of my joking, I didn't immediately burn to a crisp. So I don't know if it's going to become part of my future, but I tell you, I do think you're right. It has the best odds because I've never done it before and I did kind of like it. I don't know if it'll stick, but it wasn't even a consideration before all of this.
You didn't play frisbee?
No, no, are you kidding? No, no, I'd probably get hurt. I'd get hit with the frisbee. I am not athletic, Jeff. No, no, I have no skills in this area.
Do you have any? Do you grow any tomatoes or anything like that?
No, Lisa does. My best friend, she grows them and then brings them all over, so I get the benefit of fresh tomatoes without any of the work. It's
I think a back to nature movement has already started. On nice days now, you often can't park if you're going toward a popular park. You have to go out a little further, but it's got a healing quality, and it's time away from our devices. So Zoom is part of a device, and watching TV on demand is device time, screen time. And I think we'll naturally balance it out with time in the real world. And what about, have you seen on Facebook or wherever these outdoor fireplaces? Like, it's not really built into the wall, but just like a little fire pit. Aren't they getting popular now?
we had my wife and I had one. We would always light it every October 3rd or whenever trick or treat was, because we'd sit at the end of my driveway or our driveway, and we'd light wood on fire, and we'd have a fire, and we'd give candy to the children and their parents. Yeah, I roasted marshmallows and s'mores on one. I bought a $19 one, and they often didn't survive, 3 or 4 fire pittings, I guess, but they do seem to be becoming very trendy for backyards in a way that I never thought I'd see. It seems like all of my neighbors have one now. They're popular. They're popular in suburbia.
Back to nature. I don't know that there'll be chickens in everybody's backyard, though. I don't think we're going that far back.
I hope not. Although I do want a goat. I would love to have a goat.
So you don't have to cut the grass?
No, I just like goats. But that's a good point. I don't cut my grass now, so somebody I have people for that, Jeff.
What do you think about telemedicine when we can go back to the office? Are we going to be encouraged to continue telemedicine? It depends on if your practitioner is over or under 50, or where are we going there?
I think that telemedicine is now here to stay. I think there was a lot of people like myself that didn't want to try it at all, and now that we've tried it, realized, it's really, really convenient. I very much like the hybrid method. Right now, thankfully, I see my psychiatrist generally twice a year, every 6 months for a med check. I can really see myself seeing my psychiatrist once via telemedicine and then once in person. But once a year in person, of course, is because I need like blood work and all of. So obviously, they haven't figured out how to do blood work over Zoom yet. But yeah,
well,
I think it's incredibly here to stay.
The next Apple Watch supposedly can do blood sugar and blood pressure
through
the watch.
But those are not things that blood sugar don't the Apple.
I don't know how. They're just what I read.
I mean Apple, they're already taking over our bodies, I'm pretty sure. They're the evil empire now. Remember their commercial that showed them break free of your corporate overlords, and she threw the sledgehammer into the TV? Yeah, they couldn't run that commercial now. They own everything. I mean, it is amazing to think about, but I like the hybrid method. And as I said, for people who can't leave the house, who can't get the time off, who need, childcare, or need to see a specialty that may not be in their area, therapy via telemedicine is incredible. It's just incredible.
Is going to therapy going to be more trending in 2021?
So I think yes for.
Gabe, you have a mustache.
I do. Wait, I do. I always
When did
have.
that
I
happen?
have a goatee.
I see. There's more.
I haven't shaved in a couple of days because I don't leave
Oh
my
yeah, that's
house.
a couple days, right?
The I think that I think that more people are going to therapy anyway. Even without the help of a quarantine or a global pandemic, I think that therapy was becoming more mainstream just on its own. And I'm very happy about that. The younger generation, the 15, the 20, the 25, the 30-year-olds, they're very pro therapy. They're okay with therapy. They understand therapy. My generation, I'm mid 40s. We're okay with therapy, but we kind of only tell our friends. And then you get to my dad's generation, and they're a bit more, 60s, 70s. They hide it a bit more. So I think that therapy was on its way up, anyways. I do think that this gave it a nudge.
Okay, what about disclosure of things like bipolar disorder? And maybe it's wrong to say this, but we're a lot more open now about disclosure related to sexual identity. And I'm not, well, they both had stigma. I'll go ahead and say that. So, uh, does disclosure, like you can say, I have bipolar disorder and nobody cares? Are we getting toward that?
I think we are, in fact, getting closer. It's it's so tough. It's so I had a lot of hope because I saw a lot of college kids, and I hate that I call them kids. I saw a lot of college students and high school students who were very open about it with their peers. And I really liked this trend. And then they got out in the real world where their bosses were 50 and 60 years old, and they did not react as favorably as their peers. And this sort of had a trickle down effect of, hey, I wish I hadn't told anybody. So I it's a very difficult question to answer. I think that people are way, way more honest with their social circles, their best friends, the people that they have dinner with in their house. But I still think that people are extraordinarily leery of it impacting their jobs and their career prospects. So yes and no. I think in
Progress? Are
some
we going to
ways
make
better.
progress in 2021
I
with the
don't know.
normalization of diagnoses?
I think that we've made a lot of progress in people saying that they have anxiety. I think we've made a lot of progress in people saying that they're overwhelmed. I think we've made a lot of progress in people saying even that they have depression. I think that on that side, a lot of progress has been made and will continue to be made in 2021. I still think that bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, suicidality, schizoaffective disorder, psychosis. I still think that is trending down. People are still very afraid of those diagnoses, and that makes the people who have them leery of sharing, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate because it makes it hard to build your tribe. Uh, Even with as out as I am for as long as I've been, I still witness and suffer from great amount of stigma for being as open as I am, and that's sad because I've been vocal about this for a decade. You would think that all of the stigma that could happen to me would have already happened. So that's sort of how I feel about it. It's trending up, but it depends on where you are on the mental health spectrum.
What do we do about that?
I think we're doing the right thing by being open, right? There are more Gabe Howards than ever before, and I'm just using myself as a generic placeholder. 10 years ago when I got started, I think I could count on one hand the number of like publicly bold and out people living with bipolar disorder. And honestly, none of them were famous. None of them were celebrities. Kurt Cobain was pretty much the only one, and he died by suicide. Now here we are, 10, 11, 12 years later, and we have prominent celebrities living with it. I think that does have potential to get the information into the right people's hands. It has some negative impact as well. I don't want to fall down a rabbit hole. I just want to state that. But I think that more people are open, and that opens the door for even more people. And eventually we'll sort of reach a critical mass where everybody can be open. But it's tough. I mean, you used the LGBTQ community, what I think is a great example of, they're still fighting. And it's sad that they're still fighting, because it these are just the way that we live our lives. These are just these, in my mind, these are basic human rights. I have an illness. I want to be honest about it. And it's rough that anybody would think it was their place to judge it. So I think we have to get above that before we can really make a lot of progress. Some people believe that it's their right to comment on your illness. And that's unfortunate, because me living with bipolar disorder has nothing to do with anybody but me and my family, and we're good. We're handling it well, and I hope more people see that.
I don't think that this is the year where we're going to have exciting new meds or new treatments, and instead the things that we know work, we will do more, peer support, family education, therapy, meds if needed, but self-care, exercise, sleep, trying to have sleep hygiene, eating well and not all sugar, those things. But when are we going to get some magic leapfrogging medications that are really game changers?
It's tough, Jeff. I don't know that any disease space is going to see a lot of progress in 2021, because it was all hands on deck for the pandemic, right? I mean, a lot of we got a vaccine in 8 months, which is an incredible amount of time, but it's because we had an incredible amount of people worldwide working on this. It's not like the same number of people that work on, say, a cancer treatment were working on the pandemic. I mean, this was a worldwide effort. Just everybody stopped and worked on this, right? So if they stopped working on other things, by definition, those things probably didn't make a lot of progress. That's number one. Number two, mental health medications, mental illness medications are often found serendipitously. They're often not researching cure for bipolar or treatment for schizophrenia. They're often researching something else. And during the clinical trials, they're like, this has shown great promise for depression. This is showing great promise for X. And then they pivot and start to work on it from that, tweak it, or however that process works. I'm not a doctor, not a researcher. So I completely agree with you. I don't think that we're going to see many medical advancements in 2021 in any illness space. And I certainly don't think that we're going to see any in mental health. But I am way open to being wrong. Would be, if they have the cure for bipolar, I'm taking it.
Well, have you been up on some of the research around psychedelics and depression and other mental illness?
So they have, the name is now escaping me. The party drug that has now turned into a treatment for depression, especially
ketamine.
Yes, ketamine. That's really exciting. And it's finally got to the point where I've now talked to individuals who are taking it. Before I had, the research, and then obviously I had, case studies and white papers. And now I've actually met and spoke with people who are taking ketamine as a treatment. And it's so incredibly encouraging, Jeff, right? It's just that they're speaking very highly of it. I don't know if that trend will continue, but so far it seems to be working.
Well, I'm really referring to more traditional psychedelics, and there seems to be some actual university-based researchers. And please be aware, this is not an endorsement of self-medicating. That's created a lot of problems for a lot of people that have mental health conditions that later had co-occurring mental health and substance abuse disorders. But there's some evidence, and so I think we'll see a little bit more of tearing down the curtain of fear to determine if there is some therapeutic uh, outcomes related to psychedelics. That there's some studies now and some books been written about it. People are talking about it, not suggesting you try it. I'm just hoping we find some things that can decrease suffering. I'm not talking about, oh, we can go and have a good time and now it's legal. Not referring to that at all. But I think what psychedelics are worth beginning to watch. Although I'll tell you this, 20 years ago, I heard about Special K, which is ketamine. And I read about it in, what the hell's that magazine? There was Omni Magazine, I think, was this like science fiction future magazine. And Special K, some researcher talked about it, and it took 20 years until there was some FDA approval. But I do wonder about psychedelics, and do they have some properties that we may learn open up new avenues for treatment.
It's always interesting to see where these ideas come from. It's important to note that just because psychedelics or THC, which is marijuana, et cetera, just because it has a positive impact doesn't mean that when you go out and buy it on the streets that you're getting the same. And I think people don't realize that. They think it's all the same. You don't know how it was manufactured, what it's been cut with, what its dosage level is. It's very, very important that people understand that. It's anything homemade probably doesn't have good quality control. Anything homemade illegally and sold illegally probably really doesn't have good quality control. And of course, if you have a bad outcome, who are you going to sue? The gentleman you met, in the alley. I only bring all this up because so many people think that it's the same. It's not the same. What scientists are studying are the active ingredients in these things to find out if it can be manufactured in a way to have long-term positive effect to, as Jeff said, remove suffering. And some of the answers to those questions are yes, like for example with ketamine. But make no mistake, you can't just run out and buy Special K from the local dealer and think that it's the same that you would get in a ketamine treatment. It's not the same at all. It's more like inspired by, and that's really what I wanted to bring up. I do hope that they research it more. All of these drugs, they've been around for a long time. We understand how to process them, manufacture them, and they're clearly having some impact on our brains. If we can harness the good impact and get the results over and over and over and over again consistently, that is very exciting, Jeff.
Yeah, my hope is research, and not the research where you go on Google and look it up and try it yourself, but that we have controlled studies, scientific research to see about costs and benefits for different kind of things. Can I take you before we end the day here? You may have some special predictions too, but what about, mine is a question. Where are we going with law enforcement and mental health crises? I see improvement, long way to go, but more systems to hand off to walk-in centers, crisis centers, openness to additional models to complement CIT. I know you do some training with CIT. Where are we going with mental health and law enforcement?
I think that in some ways it's very positive, right? The very fact that we're willing to have these discussions is positive. I want to be very, very clear that I think there is a net gain. I think some of the challenges are, some precincts, police forces, unions, police officers, they don't feel that it's for them. They're not sure why they need it. In some cases, it's almost seen as, well, you're saying we're doing it wrong. And nobody's saying that. Like, I want to put that right out there. And we're having these conversations more and more. It is absolutely a net positive, Jeff. More police forces are getting on board with CIT, crisis intervention training, than ever before. I do think that we have a long way to go. I do not think that 2021 is the year that it becomes mandatory. And as somebody who lives with mental illness, as somebody who knows that if I have a crisis, police are going to be called first, it does concern me that Police know they're the first responders for people with mental illness, yet they don't require mandatory training. 2021 is not the year that we're going to get there. And I think that's going to be the watershed moment. That's going to be the big thing that we need. And I think that we're inching closer and closer. And I'll be so excited when we get there.
Well, I hope also for the handoff where police have somebody to take somebody for evaluation, because if the choice is do nothing or jail, people are going to jail that don't need to be there.
Yeah.
And if they have a place to take somebody where they may get some treatment, because I talk to a lot of law enforcement and they're really frustrated to have somebody, I arrest them, I take them to jail, they're out, back again, over and over. They're not getting recovery. And a place for law enforcement to take somebody where they're going to get some compassionate care and some resources to give folks a chance to find recovery.
All we're asking for is an opportunity, right, Jeff? I think that's maybe one of the things that gets missed so often in mental health advocacy. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for the kind of treatment that works to allow us to lead our best life. Unfortunately, because of our illness, the world is not the same for us. And that means we need some different things. We don't want any sort of special treatment. We just want the treatment that works for us. And I think that is a message that gets lost a lot. And I hope, I don't know that it will be, but I hope that 2021 is the year that more of these conversations are at least had and have the opportunity to get through. We'll see what happens. I, as we've talked about before, Jeff, am more of a pessimist.
Well, you got the glass half full and the glass half empty, but if you just have no glass at all, you're in a worse place. Do you have any predictions to share?
I think that I predict wholeheartedly and excitedly and honestly that this is the year that we have more mental health conversations than ever before. Now, I want to put, a little asterisk on it because that is my way. Those mental health conversations are going to be surrounding, work-life balance and anxiety and being overwhelmed and anger issues, etc. All extraordinarily positive. I think that finally, more people are willing to admit that everybody has mental health. Every single person has mental health. Now, most of us have good mental health most of the time, but even people with the best mental health in the world can have a mental health crisis, whether it's stress, anger, being overwhelmed, anxiety, grief, like, for example, the death of a loved one or loss of a job, etc. I believe that we have now slain that dragon. That mental health is something that people understand we all have and can go bad. And that is an excellent step to step 2, which is understanding and accepting mental illness, which is similar but different.
Boy, I'm not with you there. I think that there's a lot of, I'm not like these other people. And I'm okay even if I have anxiety, but there's these other people and they're, I'm not like that. And I don't think of myself as part of that tribe. I think we've got a long way to go on that one. Am I wrong?
I'm
okay.
Again,
I've got issues, but I'm okay. I'm not one of these people.
I think that we definitely have that, but they'll say, I have anxiety, but I'm okay. I'm not one of these crazy people like Gabe. And that's what I see happening now, where people have now sort of moved it a little bit. Like before, you were perfectly mentally healthy and everybody else was crazy. Now it's up one, whereas you have anxiety, you're overwhelmed and you're stressed out, but hey, at least you're not crazy. So that's advancement. It's not good for people with, major depression, psychosis, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. But I do have to say, people who are suffering with anger issues and anxiety issues and feeling overwhelmed, that can turn into suicidality, that can turn into harming yourself or others, that can turn into major mental health problems. So maybe this will free up some resources.
Well, I'm all
don't
about
know.
mental health literacy. And to me, there's not a question of, I don't like hearing serious mental illness and just plain old mental illness, because depression, if you lose your job, your family, and perhaps your life, it's pretty damn serious. And early intervention is really better. So I hope it's a year where mental health literacy grows. And I think also that the idea of self-care will grow. And I'm going to stop with that. You may have more to share, but I think that the idea of self-care, which promotes well-being and mental health, self-care really matters. And I think that that'll be more brought up at doctor's visits and everywhere else, that we have a responsibility to focus on self-care, whatever that means. So thank you, Gabe. And what do you have to take us home?
So first and foremost, I think that we can both agree that the future looks different yet positive. And I've done a lot of these, what do you think is going to happen in mental health kind of, shows, blogs, podcasts, videos for pretty much my entire career. And this is the first time I was like, hey, we have movement. Like, things are moving in a different direction. I did this last year, and you're like, what do you think will change? And I was like, nothing. Well, do you think anything major happened? Nope. And this year it's like, well, we got the rise of telemedicine, we got the rise of support groups, we got the rise of Zoom, we've got the rise of people talking about mental health. So in that way, I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know whether to be excited or not, but man, Jeff, this is the most exciting what will happen in mental health advocacy this year, January show I have ever done. And for that, I am incredibly optimistic. So to take us home, listen, NAMI Tennessee has an email list, and it is awesome. It's called NAMI at Home. You can get it by going to NAMITN.org. Sign up. We'll send you one email a week. It will remind you of cool things like these Facebook Lives. It curates content from all over the web, and it reminds you of things like the Saturday with Sydney, the very cool, awesome mentalist. More information on that at NAMITN.org as well. We can't. The man is amazing. He mailed something to our NAMI Walks manager, mailed it. She didn't open the envelope, nothing. And then asked her a whole bunch of questions. And then she opened it up, and he had guessed everything that she was going to say. Mailed it a week in advance. You've got to be there to check that out. Join NAMI Tennessee's email list, NAMITN.org. Jeff, do you have any last words before we head on out?
I just wish everybody a happy, healthy 2021, and I look forward to our community life calming down so that we can focus a little bit on other things that matter also.
All right, everybody, we will see you next week.